Hmm. All right, how's it going, everybody? How's it going, guys? It's Onimesh from Aerobic Animal, and I did a seminar last week where I was talking about this new concept that I feel like has a great application in lots of different health and fitness products and services. And it was a very small seminar, 3 people attended, but it was a good seminar. I was satisfied with the conversation we were able to have. And I was satisfied that I was able to practice my material, practice giving these presentations, because that's going to be very important in the coming few days as we unpack some more of these complex yet simple topics. The reason why we are getting into all of this is because as simple as our delivery should be, as simple as the product or the service that we are delivering should be, so that it can be scaled, so that it can be, scaled out to accommodate a lot of different people. Your understanding of what that deliverable is should be complex. So a complex understanding should be feeding a simple delivery. The delivery should absolutely be simple. You want to package your information correctly and present it in front of the correct crowd. Um, so yeah, we should be able to understand how to read the crowd. We have to know that. But so that's why us as coaches, us as fitness professionals, health and fitness professionals, we should be getting into the, you know, complexities of this. What are we observing and things like that. So the thing that we talked about in the seminar that I did this last Saturday ultimately came down to this one idea or this one system that we tried to observe and visualize. And it's the scope reduction cascade in your thoughts whenever we are observing things. And it's this cascade of events that has like three different attractors, three different things that happen in that cascade, three distinct steps. And that way it is kind of it seems to replicate itself and repeat itself, and it appears to be everywhere in nature, like wherever you see it, in different, wherever you want to observe around you, it's just there. And that's what the system basically is how our thoughts move from these three different phases, where it begins with us observing something. And that way, I guess it has 4 steps, because it begins with us being aware, right? That's what we've got going for ourselves as neurophysiological beings. We are afforded this ability to, or this really um high degree of conscious experience, high degree of awareness. Awareness isn't like a binary thing where you either have it or don't have it. Just different kinds of beings have different degrees of awareness through different things that are afforded to you. You get to exploit your environment a little bit more than other beings can. For example, you're not a tree, you're not as restricted as a tree would be. You're not as restricted as a really low grade organism would be. We are, so we are afforded a lot more of a chance to impose our will, if you want to call it that, in our environment and in the way we exist. So it begins with being aware, right? Then it goes on to be observing something, because we are only observing what we are aware of. And then we observe things. The third phase is the assumption phase, where from what we are observing, from our pool of observation, we make a set of assumptions, and it's sometimes it's a very conscious heavy decisions what assumptions you're making, and rest of the time it just happens, but it still does. So we assume things and then we reach to conclusions. So the cascade of events, it goes from being aware to observing to assuming to concluding. And by nature, this cascade is reducing. It doesn't expand. I just don't see it expanding or how that would be possible, because you cannot observe more than what you're aware of. If you're not aware of a plane of events that exist, because it's not immediately apparent to you whenever you're trying to, observe something, then you're not going to observe that. That's going to be hidden from you. And that happens whenever you're just doing it for the first time, whenever you're observing something for the first time. There are lots of planes of events that are going to be hidden from you. So we observe what we are aware of, and we can't observe more than what we are aware of. And we cannot make any set of assumptions that lies outside of the scope of observation, because that just I just don't see how that plays out in reality. Like, how do you assume more than what you know? You can't do that. And and depending on what you assume, all of this basically sets the foundation, sets the bedrock for the conclusion that you arrive at, whatever that is. So the point being that the scope of the conclusion that you arrive at, or if you're in the professional industry, your conclusions is basically what makes your deliverables, right? Your services and your products. What you're able to serve to your audience, or the product that you're able to create for your audience, it is based on a set of assumptions. Those assumptions are based on a set of on a pool of observation, right? They have emerged through a pool of observation, and that pool of observation has emerged from your awareness, right? Has been afforded to you because of your awareness, of your a field of awareness. And this is the idea that we talked about in the seminar. And that seminar was for fitness and healthcare professionals, because this series of events, this series of events, awareness, observation, assumption, conclusion. When you try to see where the system exists in the professional world, in the professional health and fitness space, you'll you'll realize that the products that you are creating and giving out, the services that you are offering, and the conclusions that you've arrived at, they have, you have arrived there through going through this cascade of events, this reducing cascade of events, where you began by observing something, and then you made a set of assumptions out of those observations, and based on the set of those assumptions, you created a product, or you arrived at a conclusion, or a set of advice, or whatever your deliverable is, a service, or a mixture of, mixed uh kind of like an archetype of all of these different things. So yeah, that's the idea that we were talking about. And this scope, this cascade of events always reduces. And so we talked about the importance of how do we kind of leverage this scope, right? We know this exists, this narrowing down cascade of events. How do we leverage this in the professional world? How do we create products and services, and how do we arrive at conclusions that that break at much more nuanced degrees of nuanced scenarios, right? How do we basically keep creating a system that's robust, not just for right now, but for multiple instances of time, for a long duration of time? How does it adapt with time and the different kind of demands that are thrown at it? So this is what we talked about, and this is what it came down to, that we got to understand, to build these products, to build these services, we need to be working on improving our area of awareness, or basically trying to ask ourselves what is hidden from us when we are observing things. The thing is, what kind of plays out against us here is that there are tons of professionals, and every single one of them is a human being, right? Is that a good assumption to make? That is right. So this is, you see how, so all of these human beings, there is going to be a common denominator. All of us have this cognitive default where we want to go through this cascade of events, right? Very quickly, as quickly as possible. That's what your body and your mind wants to do. That's what your neurology and physiology wants to do. It wants to put your thoughts through this cascade of events very quickly. What I mean by that is that whenever you observe anything, your body's cognitive default is going to be arrive at a conclusion, to run the system quickly. The system that's just observable everywhere, including your thoughts, whenever you're doing anything. That's the cognitive default. And we have this innate cognitive default, and all of us go out and become professionals. And it's going to keep happening. Whenever we observe things, we're going to want to arrive at conclusions quickly. And that goes against what we should be doing if we want to create or arrive at conclusions and then create products and services that are good not just right now, but for a long duration of time. Because again, your the scope, end of the day, the scope of your, because this cascade of events is, this system is reducing in nature, it doesn't expand as it goes through these attractive phases, it reduces. So the scope or efficacy of your set of advices, your conclusions, your products and your services is going to be heavily influenced by what you were first of all aware of. And in this seminar, we talked about a couple of really commonplace examples, such relatable examples that everybody was able to resonate with. And it became very easy to understand what we are talking about here. And we tried to unpack the importance of going against that, making conscious effort to go against that cognitive default, where you will want to arrive at conclusions quickly, but you have to ask yourself, you have to make self audits and ask yourself what is hidden from me that is not immediately apparent to me. Because all you really need is just simple probability to tell you that there are definitely going to be things that are hidden from you, right? There's a highly likely chance that there are lots of lanes of events that are hidden from you, that you're not able to observe right now, right? We have a biased observational viewpoint, or a biased observation, or an observational bias, where whatever is apparent to us immediately, that's what we are trying to use to connect the dots, right? And things reveal themselves when your area of awareness increases, and your area of awareness can only increase. See, end of the day, it all comes down to one thing, and that is consistently making self audits, consistently asking yourself, where do the limitations of our biases lie, what is hidden from us, and what are we not trying to look for, right? Just so that we can arrive at a conclusion quickly. That's going to be your default. You will want to do that at a very like a very innate level, because your neurology and your physiology wants that. But that doesn't come in handy when you're a professional. And the good news is that you can leverage this funnel, this cascade of events. If you're constantly asking yourself the question, where what is hidden from me, and trying to look for more planes of events that are not immediately apparent to you, your field of awareness is going to improve. As that improves, you're going to be able to observe a lot more things than you were able to. And as that happens, you're going to be able to assume better things. You're going to be able to build a system that breaks or that fails at very intricate and very nuanced scenarios or problem cases, right? And that's good news, because then whenever that happens, you get a very specific answer back in terms of what you should be doing to make the system more robust, right? And then you've got yourselves something that you can kind of build for years and years and decades on end. You've got a system that grows and evolves with you, it adapts with time. And it all comes down to, again, making consistent self audits and asking yourself what is hidden from me that I'm not able to observe. And the thing is that This is a fractal practice. As much as you do it, you'll realize that there's just no end to it, right? And it's happening in front of our eyes as we speak. What was food yesterday has become macronutrients and micronutrients today. It'll be segregated and understood better as much more subcategorized parts tomorrow, and that's just going to keep on happening because these things, food, us human beings, all of these different things that are packing such high levels of complexity, where you're just kind of observing them in one level of their systemic arrangement in this environment, in this reality. But there are many more levels to observe, right? At the most macroscopic level, we got to understand that everything is a product of its environment. So no two things have the same ecological context, no two things have the same environmental constraints. That's how dynamic it is. And and then you can just start observing things at as many subsystem levels as you want. For example, you begin by observing yourself as a product of your environment, and then you understand that you are you, and then you are a part of organ systems, and organ systems are part of, are made up of organs. Organs are made up of tissues go down to cells go down to subcellular whatever, and that goes down to atoms go down to subatomic particles. We've got quarks, we've got neutrinos, and as more and more things reveal themselves to us, as our search for, as a species, our search for trying to expand our area of awareness increases, more and more things will get revealed, and we'll be able to assume things better, and our understanding will break at very nuanced scenarios. So you see how this is playing out at a very major level as well. It's not just about us being fitness professionals. Everything that we understand about anything, this is how things happen, right? So So that's what this is. A bad system, a bad practice will just break at very macroscopic levels. It'll be tested at just very entry levels of the system, and that's where it breaks. One example of systems that are very fragile are the other group class models, where we are literally in a scenario where 99% of group classes, I'm going to say 99, probably is more than that if we, all things considered, are are considering a very wrong model for training, where we just talked about how no two beings can have the same ecological context, right? That's what non-ergodicity is. That's something that I discussed in the seminar, where non-ergodic systems have to seem to have this deep sense of history to them, where wherever they are, whatever they have achieved, and whatever the outcome is related to non-ergodic systems, whatever processes they have been through, they have had a very distinct journey. And different systems might arrive at the same conclusion, but they could have had and they definitely have had very distinct journeys to that same outcome. For example, human beings as non-ergodic systems, we have so many different things that happen to us, that happen to a lot of us. But that doesn't mean that every single one of us have had the same journey to that outcome. For example, back pain, or a certain way of walking, or a certain way of sitting, a certain way of talking, all of these different things that are, that are just global emergent uh, behaviors that human beings display, that's just common between a lot of people, happen. And then we treat it in a way where we assume that every single one of these people, every single one of these systems, different systems, have had the exact same journey to that outcome, to that one instance of time where we are trying to observe things, right? We are by default saying that by observing a bunch of systems for one single instance of time, by observing an ensemble of systems for one instance of time, we can infer things about what every single one of those systems will go through a long, duration of time. We're saying that through observing a bunch of an ensemble of systems for any particular instance of time, we'll be able to accurately predict the trajectory of one of the systems through the unique journeys that they will have. And you see how that is wrong, how that goes against non-ergodicity. That's what ergodicity is. That's what ergodic systems do. You can do that for ergodic systems. For ergodic systems, the ensemble average and the time average is going to be the same. You can look at an ensemble for a particular instance of time, and you can infer things accurately about one of those systems going through a duration of time. But you can't do that for human beings, because human beings, we talk about individuality a lot, but we forget to understand what that really is. Individuality basically means that we have a deep sense of history to us. Whatever outcome we are at, we have had very distinct journeys to that outcome, and that's what non-ergodicity means. That's what your non-ergodic property is. And we have to understand what this is underpinned by. It's underpinned by the things that we talked about. It's underpinned by the fact that no two systems, no two human beings have the same ecological context, right? We are all kind of growing and adapting in different ecological constraints and environmental constraints. And environment, you got to think about environment from a very objective lens. I do not mean wind, water, and all of, weather and all of those things. You might think that, no, we all of us live in the same kind of weather. No. By environment, I just simply mean think about yourself as a system and think about everything else as your environment. You're constantly interacting with things in your environment. So the fact of quantum reality is that no two things can have the same place, right? No two things are experiencing things the same way. So the environmental context, the ecological context for every single thing just varies a lot. And then you are in an environment that's so dynamical in nature that it's not just you that's non-ergodic, every single thing around you is non-ergodic as well. So, and none of them are having the same ecological experience or the environmental constraints. And then all of this, we exist in this flux where things are just non-ergodic, things are just, unpredictable in a way, very non-linear, very complex. And these are the things that underpin the fact that we are non-ergodic systems, right? We don't have the same ecological context, we don't have the same journeys, we don't have the same initial conditions. And that's where I feel like group classes are going wrong a lot in 99%, and I want to say even more than that, group classes, what we are doing is we're saying that we've got this one model, we've got this one way of working out, and we've got 20 people doing this, and all 20 of them are going to benefit out of it. When you do that, you're just leaving it at the hands of fate, right? Because there's going to be, again, rely probability to tell you that there's going to be a huge majority of people, and it's more than likely that that will be the case, that will just not benefit from this training. Because when you do that, when you say that we've got one model and it'll work for everybody, we've got one group workout that's going to work for everybody, what you're basically saying is that we are assuming same initial conditions for all of the systems that we are observing. And we can't do that because we know none of these systems have had same journeys, and they're not at this, same point in their journeys. We can't assume those things about human beings. So, you got to have a model that's non-ergodic in nature, that's not making that assumptions, that's respecting individuality. And no, it is not a very time-consuming and impractical task where you want to also think about, how much of that is really possible, how much is it really possible to respect individuality in a group class. The thing is, when you think that you're limited by time, if you and that's why you can't really contextualize the process for everybody in a group class. First of all, let me make you aware of the fact that you're probably, and that's more than likely, I'm not saying that's definitely the case, but you're not leveraging the environment as a coach. Us as fitness coaches, a lot of the times we just rely on verbal cues. We just rely on ourselves as the coach. We forget to understand that you literally have an environment that you can exploit. That's what a training room is. You've got a system, the person, and you've got an environment, and you've got these different tools, the equipment that you're working with, the weights that you're working with, right? You've got that. You can set up tasks that have different objectives, that have different incentives. So there are all these different parameters. And if you just, five, six different parameters, you can set up tasks, you can set up in different incentives, different objectives, different constraints. You can move around the environment, make it very dynamic in nature. You can set up, work with props, you can work with cues, and you can work with positioning the system or the body in a certain way. And you can do all of these different things, all of these, exploit all of these different parameters, and you can build up build up these dynamical systems, these dynamical training models, where you're leveraging the environment to the best of your ability. And it's just not you that's the coach, the environment is the coach as well. And when you have those kind of training sessions that are a lot more task oriented, that are a lot more dynamic and variable in nature in terms of having just a lot of different incentivized and just a lot of different kinds of these neurosensory experiences where, you know, you're just really leveraging the environment to engage the system a lot more. When you have these sessions, it can be scaled for a lot of different people, right? But when you're only relying on verbal cues, you're going to run into a limit very soon and very hard. And that's not all that bad, because what I feel like should can be done here is that a lot of us are in the position, a lot of us that are conducting these group classes or can have a say in how these group classes go are also, right? I'm not saying everybody, but some of us fall in a situation where we can do something about it, where we have the leeway or we have the flexibility to run those experiments and make these reforms to our systems and become the ones that, adapt these the systems into our models of how we work and how we kind of make our offers and our products and services. And that'll be a very good scenario for you, because we are looking at a field that's 99.9% uncharted territory, where existing, where like I said, 99.9% people are assuming ergodicity and using this ergodic models where non-ergodicity can be assumed, and you can just change the training experience of the entire group, where they have a phenomenal experience, where they go from where you go from you're trying to conduct a class and try to make it fun in a way where it's bearable for people, where they are just happy with the fact that they woke up and were somehow able to make it to there, to something to an experience where they show up and they perform and they are engaged and they are listening and they're buying in and they're bought into the process. And a lot of them are, and they're interacting, and different things are emerging, and creativity is emerging, and a congruency is emerging. It's not that hard to do. Like I said, it's not that complex. And like I also said, even if it is a little complex, you owe it to yourselves to understand that complexity so that your deliverable is simple. You owe it to yourselves to improve your area of awareness so that you arrive at a product that breaks at a much more finer and nuanced level, and not simply at the macro levels or outer surfaces. And that's where a lot of group classes are going wrong. They're building systems that just break at very macroscopic levels. You're doing the same workout for 20 people and expecting results to emerge. And what really ends up happening is that 16 of them will not pay you after the first 3 months. Some of them will be so fit for the workload of the workout that you've been doing that they are just accommodated to what you're doing. Some of them are probably not wired in a way where they can get engaged in a task like that. Right? The same kind of cues is not going to work for everybody. The same kind of incentives is not going to work for everybody. And some of them, so yeah, you have all these different things that can happen that will result in this huge turnover rate, which is not imaginary. It's one of the biggest realities of our industry, is this big turnover rate where people don't pay after the first cycle. People don't pay after the first few months. They don't show up after the first few months. Most of the training plans fail in the first 3 months. And I have been plagued by the question of why that happened, why that happens. And I was kind of getting at it, and now I understand it a lot more well. And I don't have to use analogies to understand what it is. Because now I understand that ergodicity is being assumed where non-ergodicity should be assumed, right? We are looking at a bunch of systems for any instance of time, and we are assuming all kinds of things about what every single one of the systems will go through a set duration of time. And we're doing that in this extremely nonlinear, extremely complex, and extremely dynamical world. And that's where this huge turnover rate emerges from, is what I feel like. So this is what we talked about in the seminar, and I plan on doing a lot more of these. Um, the whole idea is to talk about this, because this is a self-replicating activity. This is uh, you know what I'm talking about, I'm also practicing as I do this, because this is going to help us improve and understand what things are hidden from us. And when we do this more and more, the whole idea is to make the general area of awareness increase, so that we are observing all kinds of things and assuming things a little better, and arriving at conclusions that are more non-ergodic, right? And arriving at a simple level of simplicity in our deliverable, in our product, in our services, that's backed up by a lot of complex understanding of what we are delivering, and just making everybody aware of the fact that there's a lot of scope here, that there's a lot to be exploited here, and a lot of us have the chance to be the first ones to do that. And it's going to change, that's going to shift, that's always going to shift. People are going to very soon realize what's happening. This is going to happen. If it doesn't happen with, right now, it's going to happen sooner or later. That's just how things work. That's just how waves come and go. And then that chances is going to, you know, not be there. And then we have to look for something else. Then we have to understand things in a much more finer way. We have to understand what is exactly pinning, and how I see that happening is we'll start understanding the complexity that we are packing a lot better. That's just where we are going with all these, all these different devices, these that give us biometric data about every single segregated thing in our system, right? We've got information on glucose levels, we've got information on macro micronutrients intake, exogenous intake. We've got we've had insight on all different kinds of hormones and neurotransmitters and these vitamins and these just very tiny substrates in our body, the levels of them. So we have all this data about and all this observation about the complexity of our body, and that's just going to keep on increasing. And as that effort goes on, things that it kind of went through the way, they're going to become much more commonplace, right? And a lot of us are going to be able to exploit those things. And so that's why this was kind of important. This was kind of important. So yeah, that's that. That's that. I'm probably going to start uploading a lot more on YouTube. This was great. Um, and yeah, we're back to doing what we do. Just I was also looking at a few of my old episodes, and I was just like, the value in those episodes is just too well. Like I'm working with somebody who I'm kind of coaching, but I'm also helping them get into the industry, get, kind of understand what's going on and get started. And it's a really educational experience for me personally. I hope it is for them as well. And in doing so, I realized that a lot of the questions that they post, they have already been answered in the videos that I've made, and I was able to just refer them to the videos, and that was a very satisfactory moment for me. And that made me think that a lot of you guys will be able to find a lot of value in those videos. Those videos from, I guess, P period 5 onwards to P period 14, there's just a lot of knowledge, a lot of different lenses that I've applied there, and a lot of different lenses that we didn't know existed. I've tried to take them off as well, and just understand things from all different kinds of scopes, macroscopic, microscopic, all different kinds of levels of understanding. And they're amazing. They're just up on my YouTube. It's hours worth of content. I keep saying that it's hours worth of content, and it's very transformational in terms of just understanding these things, understanding these non-ergodic, things that are observable in front of us, that are present in front of us. It was a phenomenal seminar. I'm going to do more of these. If anybody has any like talking opportunities for me or anything like that, please send them my way. And yeah, this is amazing. So yeah, see you guys for the next one.